kind of want to start with the whip, though. I kind of want to start with the top. Not that you say Europe memes. I am doing a whip-only playthrough on Elden Ring. So I really want to see the whip that crushes bones.
Find out how dangerous whips are. And so I learned to use...
Dude, that's just like the Elden Ring whip. That's just like the Elden Ring whip.
And so I learned to use one. And even though it's really powerful, when I tried replacing the original
two-handed,
tracker, which is a
if you two-hand your weapon, it's even more powerful.
tiny nylon rope at the end of the whip with a steel wire,
oh brother,
it got definitely higher.
Oh,
and so I started
oh damn, oh shit, oh this is gonna be crazy.
Wondering if a whip was entirely made of stronger and heavier materials compared to a normal one.
But would you even be able to crack it?
Travel as fast as a normal
Would you even be able to crack it? Cause that's heavy, right?
Whip? Could it slice through anything? Like
oh brother.
Well,
oh, that's so sick!
So now I only needed the strong whip.
Dude, that's gonna kill you.
At first, I wanted to buy one, so I started.
Kitty cat! Kitty cat! Kitty cat! Kitty cat! Dude, my voice is so broken. My voice is so broken. Kitty cat, dude. If it's a metal whip, it'll crack anything on contact. That's crazy!
Looking for it online, and I found just a few steel whips, but they're not actually whips. What I found was a lot of videos of
okay, that's crazy. That's too much.
Massive chain whips. But the problem with something
that's
like that
too much.
is obviously the weight. That chain is probably impossible to lift, and that makes it the deadliest weapon in the world to use against ant colonies. I got nothing against ants though, and I wanna be able to crack my whip mid-air because they do this like mosquitoes.
God damn, whips are so cool, chat. I should get a whip for my VTuber model. Guns this, guns that. I should have a whip.
So, I couldn't find anybody that was selling the whip I was looking for. Maybe because it's a bad idea. Probably because it's dangerous for everything. And
oh, brother. He's just imagine the recoil on your legs, dude. Oh, brother. If that thing hits you, ah.
And me. But I guess there was...
Wait, bunny costume, Taco. What do you mean? Oh, I don't have it on.
There's only one way to find out. I was
gonna need a safe word. Oh no! Don't even, dude.
Whip, wag, brug, whip, crack, correct, shigwash, quick. I hope Kachin cracks me with a whip and chains me up, and oh, Kachin, oh, Kachan,
Guys, please ignore my chat. They're a bit disturbed mentally. They're a bit disturbed.
By testing both against a bunch of different targets. So, to
make
the
just
whip
as
toilet
head
as possible, the first step was to figure out how whips actually work. And after a while, I found a few articles and videos that explained exactly what I needed. Basically, when you swing a whip, your hand and the handle of the whip move relatively slow. But they also generate momentum, which is the loop you see there. And a few years ago, this guy basically said that the momentum at the beginning and at the end of the whip has to stay the same. But since the base of the whip is much heavier than the tip, the only way momentum can stay the same is by increasing the speed. So the loop
who invented the whip, I wonder?
As the section of the whip gets smaller, till it gets to the cracker, a tiny light rope that travels really fast, like 900 miles per hour fast. So basically, instead of whip, a big mass with low speed turns into a really high speed when the mass is small. For this reason, when buying all the materials,
this is
I look for something really heavy for
this is epic. Wait, so is he gonna do a chain where the things get progressively smaller? Because it does need to be like slightly like getting smaller and smaller, right?
Base of the whip and lighter for the tip. Something more durable and more dense than a normal whip, but also flexible, so that it could still move very fast. And also safety goggles. So, for the body of the whip, I went with progressively smaller wire ropes. A 6mm one, a 4mm one, and a 2mm one. And then a tiny wire rope that I was gonna use as the cracker of the whip. Somebody actually already makes self-defense weapons out of wire ropes. And they are really cool.
Oh, damn!
Because now, imagine that, traveling faster than the speed of sound. But the main reason I picked wire ropes is because they are heavier than the classic materials used for a whip. And since they're flexible, I believe they could still create the loop and behave exactly as a whip does. And to make sure the whip was gonna be as powerful as possible, to increase the weight even further, I got this big...
Dude, I want to see if it decapitates that guy. I think it's going to decapitate him. I saw a guy on TikTok do an actual chain whip like 2 years ago at least.
that I actually stole from my bike.
So what?
My
It's so
plan
cool.
was to
Doesn't
place
matter
it
if he's the
right after
first to
the
do
whip.
it.
I knew chains could work as whips, thanks to the ant killer guys. But I still wanted to double check that and see how he behaved. And I almost lost my knee while doing that.
Yeah, that feels like the biggest danger for the metal whip. You're gonna hit yourself.
About as long as the latter one. A shorter whip would probably be easier to handle, which wouldn't be too bad, because when I spanked myself with a normal whip, I basically just stopped thinking, and I felt the need to leave because of the pain. And I don't want to even think about what would happen with the steel.
Oh, yeah.
A shorter whip would also be less powerful. So yeah, so I cut the 4 ropes. 2 meters for the big one, 1.5 for the medium one, 1.2 for the small one, and then a few centimeters for the cracker. And like that, I ended up with a total length of 3 me and
I'm sorry, no, what? Sir, I don't think that word is allowed on Twitch, sir. Take it back.
about 1 foot. Plus the chain and the handle that I'm gonna realize I didn't take into account later. Now the hardest part was putting them together. At first, I thought about welding them, but since the ropes are really thin, I feared they would just melt. Moreover, I went back home for Christmas, and I have no idea where my father keeps the welding machine. Luckily,
Every
though,
time I
there are
see a weapon video, I'm like, I need to add this to my next VTuber model. Every single time I start thinking, how would I be able to add this one to my model?
a bunch of ways to connect wire ropes together. It must be that somebody had my same idea of making a powerful whip, and they ended up making bridges. Anyways, my top priority for this was to find a connection that would let the ropes move freely, without interrupting the loop. My second priority was that it looked kinda good, and my third priority was that the connections were strong enough to resist the stress, avoiding to launch supersonic steel ropes into my neighbor's garden. Spoiler, I think I failed the last one. And for all those reasons, I decided to go with swag sleeves. Sorry, swage sleeves. These are commonly used for
I'm gonna have an
steel wires,
armor, but
and
you're
even though
right.
They don't look too solid to me. When installed properly, the
Thank you for the follow. Yo, don't say bros shooting ropes. Don't say bros shooting ropes, dude. Oh, brother, dude. Dude, that's crazy. I need all of the weapons. I'm just gonna be the weapon VTuber. I will have all of the weapons.
strength of termination is 90% of the breaking strength of the cable, when installed properly. Did I already say that? There are also different kinds of connections, like these clamps, but I figured dangerous spikes and supersonic whips wouldn't go well together. And so, I picked the option of the swage sleeves, and I tried to make the eye as tight as possible so that it wouldn't slow down or stop the loop of the whip. Then, I connected all the cables together.
I don't
and the last
understand
step
half of
was
this,
to
but I
secure the
love
swage
it.
Sleeves. To do that, you need to crimp them, using the swage tool.
What do
And
you
like
mean you
that,
gotta
the body
crimp
of the
them?
whip was basically ready. This was the
So you gotta cream the shots that the ropes that you're shooting? You gotta cream the ropes that you're shooting, bro?
easiest and fastest way I could find to connect
Bro's
all the loops
crimping.
together. And I was actually surprised and happy that it worked. For like 5 minutes. Because in that moment, I started to have a few doubts that almost made me quit this entire idea. Basically, I randomly tried moving the rope like a whip. And I noticed the connection between the cables was making the system bend on itself.
Yeah.
While a normal whip has some sort of rigidity. It's not completely flexible and it doesn't fold on itself. But in this case, the medium cable kept folding over the big one.
Yeah, that
And I
makes
was
sense. I think he needs to like... You know how these wires are made out of tiny little wires? He needs to somehow combine the wires within each other. You know, like he needs to like braid them into themselves.
worried it was gonna prevent the whip from working like a whip. So I decided to quickly test it, and with that, I realized 2 things. The first is that the whip
Bro's
wasn't
crimping out
behaving
some
like
hot
a whip.
Italian ropes at supersonic speeds all over his
Stop
neighbor's
with that TTS! It loses momentum and energy, yeah. Honestly, I can't believe we didn't realize this when he was doing it.
At all. And the second is that the whip kept spanking me. And the crazy part is that even at that low speed, it was already hurting. So I had two problems to fix. The first one was fixing the whip so that it could go supersonic, and the second one was not getting spanked by the supersonic whip. So I
Metal pants. Metal pants. Metal pants.
tried first tightening the eyes, making them so tight they basically couldn't move. But even though the whip got slightly better, that didn't really work. Then my father came home and we found the welding machine. So he tried welding the connections, but as expected, the welding machine was way too hot and it simply melted the wires of the cables.
Aww.
So I spent a while thinking about new ways of making the connections. And do you remember those clamps with dangerous spikes? Well, I decided to use those. The reason why I did
Oh
that
my god,
is
he
because when I
taped
tried
it
making
up.
a connection with this kind of clamps, I realized they were making the whip much more rigid than before, solving, in theory, the spanking problem. Hopefully. Now, before testing the whip, I had the chain and the handle left. And honestly, I wasn't entirely sure if the chain was gonna exponentially increase the power, thanks to the weight, or simply slow everything down because of the weight. Or
That
even
makes
worse,
sense.
since the whip is already really long, the extra
It is
weight
very
and
long.
length could make it way too hard to handle and much more dangerous. So because of that, I decided to cut the chain in half. And then I used a climbing clamp to connect the two portions. The idea was try attaching half of the chain to the whip first, and then the entire chain, and see which one worked the best.
Ah, that's
Also,
smart,
I know it doesn't
actually.
look pretty, but my goal was making the most
Extendable
powerful
chain.
whip, and not the prettiest one. And I'm sure he has a great personality. Anyways, I attached half of the chain to the whip, and I quickly wanted to test it, mainly to see if I was at least on the right path. And from this test, you can tell two things. One, I'm not really into fashion, and two, even with half chain, this was actually kinda working like a whip. And when I tried to crack it, this happened. So after quickly destroying pomegranate,
Okay, whips are epic. Chat, I'm
I
sorry,
attached the
whips are
second
so
half of the
epic.
chain to it, because I was confident that was gonna make it even faster. And even though I felt like my arm was about to fall off because of the weight of the whip, my technique was also slightly improving. And with the full chain, I got something similar to a crack. To be fair, it was not the classic sound of the whip. It was different. For now.
It's more like a boop.
The whip was picking up water from the ground and turning it into mist. I think because of how fast it was flying. And I know it looks like I'm not happy about it, but I really was. It's just that the
Damn.
sound is
Okay, I don't even know what to say. I'm like, ooh. Chat, what's the safe word? Oh my god. Whip weapons in games are so sick and underrepresented. Yeah, it's funny because I picked the Elden Ring whip around as a joke, thinking like, what the hell are you gonna do with the whip in this game? And it's actually really OP.
makes, combined with the idea of it being a steel cable traveling as fast as a 9mm bullet, not that far away from my face. Well, it was unusual, to say the least.
Wait, is as
I mean,
fast
what
as
would
a
you think if
bullet?
you saw some random dude using a supersonic chain whip in his backyard? Well, I was thinking the same thing.
Ow!
Anyways, before actually testing the whip and compare it to the normal one against all the targets, there was one more thing I had to improve to consider it complete. If you pay attention in the slow motion here, you see that the whip moves on the same plane till it gets to the connection of the big cable with the medium cable. And I wanted to fix that, because I believe that that movement was actually slowing the whip down. If you remember, I scrapped my first design because I was worried about the lack of rigidity of the whip. But the chain is completely flexible, and it's free to move in every direction. And still, it was perfectly working like a whip. And so I
That's
started wondering,
right.
what if my first design with the switch sleeves was actually better than the new one?
Oh
The
my
hope
god,
is with
imagine
the
that
old
it was.
connections, everything was gonna be able to move in a fluid way, exactly how it was happening with the chain. So to find out, I tried making it once again. And even with half chain, this whip was not only working, but it was actually working better than the previous design. And my
Yeah,
only
okay, so
explanation for
never
the fact
mind.
that
He
now
was right from the start. It's rare to see cool whips in games. Elden Ring has a tooth whip.
these kind of connections are perfectly functioning, and before they weren't, is that I was the problem, meaning lack of skills on my side. Then I tried attaching an even smaller cable at the end of the tip, and for the first time, I got an
Yeah,
actual
the
crack out
clap!
of it. The body of the whip, without the handle, weighs 4.2 kilograms or 9.25 pounds. And that makes it 7 times heavier than the
4
normal bull whip.
kilos.
It's probably not
Damn.
the best looking whip out there, but with the eye connections, I felt it was looking pretty good. At this point, only the handle was missing. And also the cracker. I mean, I actually had it before, but I think I
It's
lost
a
it when
massive metal whip, Elias Traffic. But yeah, I feel like I would slice my legs in half. I would try it once, you go back, and he would cartoonishly just slice me in half.
right after cracking it for the first time. So I left it without the cracker. What I didn't know is that that would eventually make the whip literally sound like a gunshot.
Dude, just the way he's jumping when it comes back.
But all my tools are like half Europe away, and I didn't want to use stuff from my father's workshop to build one. So I decided to use a wrench. And like that, the whip was
Wait,
finally-
a claymore is 3 kilograms. What? But I can lift 3 kilograms. I thought claymores were supposed to be really heavy.
complete. Now, I wanted to find out if the custom whip was actually more powerful than the normal one. And if it was, how much more powerful. And to do that, I get a bunch of different
He keeps
targets.
edging us. He keeps edging us with that footage and then just stopping it before the impact.
Starting from the softest, apples, then soda cans, pineapple and
No, that's just a misconception. The balance is what makes them hard to wield. I really thought claymores were like 10 kilograms, man. 3 kg sounds way too less to be real. The balance and size makes it awkward. If they were heavier, they'd be practically useless. Chat, I want the claymore. Can you guys buy me a claymore? I'll do an RL stream with the claymore if you buy me one, chat.
pumpkin. And I also got ballistic gelatin that I already used in another video, but I'm gonna use again because it's expensive. And then finally, a ballistic dummy. The plan was to test each whip against all these targets and then compare the damage. Alright?
Dude, imagine the metal whip is not even stronger than the... Dude, I imagine it's not even better. That would be so sad.
Apples are first. So I'm gonna start with the classic bullwhip, and then I'm gonna try the chain one. It's like a 99% chance I'm gonna hit the table. Well, it's been a while since I properly used the whip, and you can clearly see the results. But after a few tries, I finally hit the target.
He hit. He
I
hit
was
it.
expecting the whip to cut the apple, but it actually...
It's
hit more than
130
that.
euros.
To be
Oh my
fair,
god,
I'm not
John, you
sure
can
if I
totally
hit
buy
it
me
with the
that.
cracker or with the body of the whip. And my
Oh my
camera
god, imagine I put a claymore on throne.
in slow motion doesn't give me much more information. And then I wanted to try with the
Apple.
chain whip. The plan was to start gently, to be as accurate as possible. But at the first attempt, this happened. When I
Oh,
checked the damage on the
Buado.
table, I got excited for the whip, and also sad for the table. I dented the table. Like,
Oh, Buado, he
let me show
dented
you.
the
In that
table.
moment, I realized that this thing
Oh,
could
damn.
actually be more powerful.
I thought it was gonna be like one tiny crease. That's insane. That's a chunk. You can't even own a butter knife in the UK without a license. I'll get a claymore license.
I thought. I did that. And that theory was confirmed on the next attempt.
Sure. Sir, are you alive?
Now. This is so scary. That was the loudest crack I've ever heard in my life. You probably can't tell the difference from the camera, but it was way louder than the normal bullwhip. It basically sounded like a gunshot, and I believe it's the handle that made the whip much more powerful than before. And as a reminder,
Jesus.
that crack means that the
That is
signal
so sick, though.
faster than the speed of sound. That is insane. Well, what wasn't insane was my accuracy with it. Using this whip is pretty painful because of how heavy it is. And every time I cracked it, it was kinda pulling my entire arm and body with it. Moreover, I was shooting high to avoid destroying the table, but after trying for a while, I decided to just give up with the apple, and I moved on to the next, taller, and harder.
Oh, damn.
Soda can, letter whip.
Waiting for
This
the...
time,
Oh my
I
god,
got
yes.
hit with the bull.
Imagine his name for... And you just hear pop, pop, pop. You just hear shots and... Oh my god. What are we reacting to? Build a whip that crushes bones.
Full whip, and it kinda bended the aluminum, but it didn't cut the can. So I moved to the chain one, and like before, it made me dance for a while.
Come on, man. Just shoot low. The table doesn't matter. It's fine.
So loud. But then after a few tries, I realized that if I wanted to crack the whip on the target, I had to aim a little to the left of it. And like that, I got it. And even though I still probably didn't hit the can with the cracker, the whip cut it in half. And I was really happy about it. The worst part is gone with these small targets. It took me a while and I lost an arm.
Oh, damn.
You see the problem? Luckily
I
now,
mean,
we
yeah,
only got
it's
the
a
big
very
targets
heavy
and then the
whip.
ballistic gelatin. Let's do it. As usual,
Holy
I tried
moly.
the bull whip first.
That's the regular whip.
But this time, I actually hit the target a few times. And that's because even
Yeah,
if I hit
that's
the
not
pumpkin,
doing it. That's
this one
tickling
did
the
no
gourd.
damage to it.
It's
Basically just
tickling the gourd.
scratches it. You see? The chain whip was a different story though. The first hit wasn't clean at all. But it made me realize that this whip would be actually perfect to grab stuff.
Oh
And
my
I
god,
couldn't
yeah,
find
I
a use
grabbed
for
it because it's
especially
so
when I
long.
sit on my sofa and I forget to grab the remote control. Before,
Don't-
I used to stand up. Now I'm simply using my chain
No,
whip.
don't do
And
it,
it's been
bro.
working flawlessly. Anyways, even with
Oh, brother. Dude.
that first hit, the whip left a deep cut into the pumpkin.
I
So
think
then-
the problem is he's too close. So he's grabbing it with the thick part. But if he got it with the thin part, it would cut it in half for sure.
I tried again, and even though I left another big cut, I also realized something. This part of the whip is wet, but the cracker is totally
That's what I said. You're hitting it with the inner because you're too close.
dry. That means I'm hitting the pumpkin with that part. So before moving to the fancy targets, I guess I had to learn how to use the whip. This time I walked further away from the pumpkin. It doesn't really look like it from the camera, but I'm probably at 7 meters from the target. And this way I got two pretty good hits. The first one that almost broke the pumpkin in half, almost with the cracker, and then the second one, cracker.
Damn.
And I left a nice deep cut with it. And even if my arm was basically just a dangling useless thing at this point, after quickly testing the whip against a pineapple and splitting it in half, I was curious to see what kind of damage the whip could do to the ballistic gel, and most importantly, to the ballistic
I hope
dummy.
it break. I don't think it's gonna cut the head off. Now that I see it, the way it did against the fruit, I don't think it's gonna cut it, but it's still gonna be very, very bad.
Should simulate the density of muscle tissue.
Cause this is it's too jiggly. If you okay, the thing is, if you had this held in place by something at the bottom, it would cut it. But because it's so jiggly, it's just gonna push it off. That's the problem, I think. It's just because if he had if he put it in place, if he bolted it into the table, it would not. It would be
Usually
destroyed.
test this against bullets.
Hey! Is that who I think it is? Is that who I think it is? Whose back I think it is? Let's go! Scott mentioned! Did not expect to see him in this video.
Also, it doesn't have bones. Anyways, I hit it first a few times with a normal bullwhip. And it just left a few light marks on it, but basically nothing. That's when I started to believe the gelatin might actually be much harder than skin. I still wanted to see what was gonna happen with the custom
Yeah, because
build,
this is like if you had only skin. Whoops! Only skin! So it would be like if your skin was this thick, I think, right?
So I flipped the gelatin, and I also replaced the cracker of the whip with a brand new steel rope. And this time, I got a perfect hit right away. The cracker left a deeper mark than the bullwhip, but it didn't cut the gelatin. And I honestly can't believe that's accurate. There is no way that wouldn't cut. And so, I decided to move right away to the ballistic dummy. This one not only has a layer of ballistic gelatin, but it should also simulate both.
Those blocks are made to stop bullets for testing. Yeah, it makes sense. That it wouldn't cut the block.
Anyways, I tried hitting it with the bullwhip, and it did basically nothing to it. While for the chain whip, the first two hits kinda scratched the head of the dummy, but at least apparently, I couldn't see any damage to it. Probably because I was looking at the wrong spot. So for this one, I decided to change strategy. My plan was to hit the dummy 10 times and then check the damage only after those. And honestly,
Oh
I got
damn,
some
you're
clean
whipping him
hits.
10 times?
The problem is that from far away, I couldn't see any damage to the dummy. So I kept going. And even though my arm was about to fall off, I couldn't stop thinking about how fascinating this thing is. It's insane that just by using physics in a certain way, you can turn a flexible stick into a supersonic flexible stick.
I think he might be dead
after
at this
the
point
10th
though.
hit, I checked the actual damage. And it turns out the damage was actually much higher than what I could see. Deep cuts and broken bones basically everywhere. Cheekbone, top of the skull, right side of the skull.
Oh
and a
damn.
huge crack on the left side.
Oh
and the back of the head.
brother.
I think I
Oh.
kinda felt it when I did that. So to answer the initial
Oh
question,
brother.
this thing is a lot more
He's
powerful
dead,
than normal.
Chad. He's dead. It just doesn't have the fancy holes that a gun would leave, but he's still dead. He's still gone. It's just not as... I mean, the thing is, he doesn't have the ones that bleed. If he had the ones that bleed, it would have been a lot more visible
Bullwhip.
what the damage
Next,
was.
I'm gonna build an insanely powerful slingshot and a very special katana. So if you like this video,
What?
subscribe to see when they come out.
That sounds
Also, big thanks to
epic!
my first supporters on Patreon.
Slingshot? Oh, epic. We're definitely gonna watch more of this guy, Chad. 100p. 100p, we'll watch more of that. That was epic! Slingshot, yes please. Epic.